Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi isanin ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, not too many days ago, we started a journey with the Quran. We're about a week in now. And we've been reciting its verses and hopefully contemplating over some of their meanings. We began, as we do in every single prayer, with the opening chapter, Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Fatiha is also known as Ummul Quran. If you were to literally translate that, it would be the mother of the Quran. Or Ummul Kitab is also called by the Prophet ﷺ. He says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ummul Quran wa Ummul Kitab wa Sab'ul Mathani. This chapter, beginning with all praise belongs to Allah, the Lord of the universe, is the mother of the Quran, the mother of the book, and the 7 oft repeated verses. This hadith is found in Sunan Abi Dawud. The context of these words is not talking about something with a mother or a father. In the Arabic language, it also means something which epitomizes or embodies a thing. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying that Surah Al-Fatiha embodies the Quran in its entirety. We could go a step further and say that not only does Surah Al-Fatiha embody the Quran, but it epitomizes all of the previous books of Revelation. You find a report, it's by Ibn Hibban, he relates on the authority of Al-Hasan, he said that Allah revealed 404 books, embodied in 4. So 404 books, all of them are embodied in 4 books. The Torah, the Injil, or what we would call the Bible, Az-Zabur, which is often called the Psalms of Dawood, or the Psalms of David, and the Quran. These 4 books we know are mentioned in the Quran by name. So all of the previous revelations have been embodied, they've been epitomized in those 4 books. The narration goes on and he says, those 4 are embodied in the Quran. And the Quran is embodied in Al-Mufassal chapters. The Mufassal chapters are the end from Surah Qaf to Surah An-Nas. Many of us have committed some of that to memory. And he said the Mufassal chapters are embodied in Al-Fatiha. Meaning everything you can find right there. And the knowledge of Al-Fatiha is found in إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. This one verse, you alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. This is the 5th verse of Al-Fatiha. So here you can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent the messengers, and He revealed the scriptures for a purpose. You can find that in this chapter. He's calling creation to gain awareness of Him, to gain awareness of His oneness, of His worship, to love Him, to draw near to Him, and to put your trust in Him Azza wa Jal. And this is the very spirit of revelation in its entirety. And everything else that you find within the Quran or the other revealed books act as a support and a way to complete that very essence, the essence of Al-Fatiha. So with that great importance of Al-Fatiha, the words that we just recited, after that, the following verse are also very distinguishing qualities of the Quran as a revelation in comparison to the other revealed scriptures and as the chapter itself. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. Meaning this is a prayer that we are to ask Allah to guide us to the straight path. The 6th verse in Surah Al-Fatiha. This prayer, by the way, is noted by our scholars to be the best prayer that one can make. Guidance. To ask for guidance. Without guidance, there's no salvation. Without this prayer, there's no إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. There's no we worship you alone and we seek help from you alone. Without guidance, there's none of that. There's no reliance. There's no worship. Without guidance, there's only loss. And the loss is in this life and in the next. And in this prayer, we're asking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide our hearts to the truth and to bless us with divine success. You can understand from the Quran, from the role of the messengers, that there are two types of guidance. The guidance of tawfiq, which is to be in harmony with the truth. And then there's the guidance of irshad, or to convey, or to show the way. And in this particular verse, we're asking that Allah guide our hearts to be in harmony with the truth. Finding the truth, brothers and sisters, and being in harmony with it is something that everyone is after. Everyone wants that. Be hard-pressed to find someone that would say, yeah, I want to follow everything that's wrong. I want to follow falsehood. I want to follow misguidance. That's what I'm after. Be hard-pressed to find someone like that. Most of us, if not all of us, are after the truth and living in harmony with the truth. But it's not something that we all agree on, what the truth is. What is true from false? What's real and what's fake? That's where we often argue and debate. And then we might disagree on what living in harmony with the truth actually looks like. And so our journey with the Quran, which began just last week, the first night, we didn't have to go too far to find the answer on what that is. Guidance to show us the practical way. What does it look like to be guided? In fact, in the very next chapter after Al-Fatiha, what do you find? After Al-Fatiha, you have Surah Al-Baqarah. And in the very opening of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Opening with these letters, Alif Lam Mim, he says, this is a book in which there is no doubt. A guide here. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. A guide to those who possess taqwa. Brothers and sisters, the Quran is therefore a book of guidance. It's a book which shows us the way. And not just a book of guidance, not any book of guidance. It's probably better to say it's the ultimate book of guidance. If you think about that previous narration related by Ibn Hibban, when he said that, or it was related that Allah revealed 404 books, embodying them in 4 books, the Torah, the Injil, and the Zabur, and the Quran. And the 4 are embodied in the Quran, as the narration mentioned. And the Quran being an embodiment of all revealed guidance. All revealed guidance you can find in the Quran. And that guidance is not just for people of the guidance of the Quran. He says, هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِّنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ. It's a guide to humanity with clear proofs of guidance and a decisive authority. This is Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 185. In this verse, Allah describes the Quran with a quality. The quality is guidance for all of mankind. And this is the primary function of the book, to serve as a source of guidance. And it's been described like that over and over in numerous verses throughout the chapters of the Quran. Not only is it the ultimate source of guidance, brothers and sisters, but the guidance that it provides is the best guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ يَهْدِي لِلَّتِي هِيَ أَقْوَمُ. He says, surely this Quran guides to what is most upright, guides to that which is best, which will set things aright. Brothers and sisters, the guidance of the Quran is comprehensive in nature. It doesn't just talk about one aspect of life and leave others alone, but it touches upon everything. It provides direction to secure immediate and long-term benefits. When we put the Quran into practice, we set things straight in this life and for the next. The Quran is applicable in all times, in all places. That's right, in all places. The Quran is applicable everywhere and in every circumstance. It teaches us everything that we need to know, provides us at times with detailed information, detailed rulings, and at other times gives us broad principles that we can use to make the best of our circumstances. Everything is covered. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً وَبُشْرَى لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ. We have revealed to you the book as an explanation of all things. تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ. There's nothing that you will come across in this life that the Quran will not have the answer for. There's nothing that you will come across in this life that you won't find the answer for it in the Quran. There's no problem too big that the Quran cannot help you solve. There's no problem that seems insignificant and without importance that the Quran hasn't addressed in some form or fashion, as I said, in detail or giving you principles to apply to handle the situation. Brothers and sisters, it introduces people highlighting for them His many names and attributes, His actions. It helps people understand what they need to know about the unseen world, which will push them to increase their faith and inspire them to perform righteous actions. The Quran tells us of our beginnings as well, how we started out as man. And it tells us about our end. It teaches us where we'll end up after our death and what awaits us in the next life. The Quran shows us the path of happiness and how to traverse that path. And it shows us, similarly, the path of misery and how to avoid it. The Quran teaches us how to live as decent people in this world, and it teaches us the best manners of engagement with those around us. It provides us with guidance regarding our personal, family, and social life. In the Quran, we learn about the rules of commerce and trade, buying and selling. We learn about the laws of inheritance, the rules pertaining to marriage and children. We learn how to deal with crime and punishment. We learn everything from the best manner of clothing and eating, feeding our own selves, to the rules of military combat, how to handle ourselves on the battlefield. All of that you can find in the Quran. And so it's no wonder that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. That the best of you are those who learn the Quran. A survey from the Senate. You know, you got the House and the Senate. So I received the survey. You may have received the same thing. And the survey, it asked, among a number of questions, if you supported, meaning the receiver of that survey, a ceasefire in Gaza, or wanted Israel to continue its military campaign until they wiped out Hamas. And then they also asked about the supplying of weapons to Israel, etc. And so when I read over that survey and looked at it, I did fill it out, by the way. I asked myself, why are they asking these questions? Why are they asking such questions? I mean, everyone knows. The world knows now what is happening in Gaza, what has been happening in Palestine. The world now knows, and the world almost in its entirety has spoken out. Why are you asking me such questions? And then I thought to myself, and who are you asking? If you sent it to me, who else are you asking such questions to? Are you asking these questions because you don't know the difference between right and wrong? Or are you asking them because you don't care about right and wrong? You only care about what people are willing to support. The people you're asking, many of them struggle with the very idea of what is right and wrong. You could ask them about topics today, they would answer very differently 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Because for a people without a book, what is right and wrong? It's blowing in the wind. There's no guidance. Where has morality gone? That's a question. Where has morality gone? I asked myself that question. And then I said, you know what? That's not even a good question to ask. Where has morality gone? I don't care where morality has gone. I think there's no real solution in such a question. I think the right question perhaps is, Where can you find morality? Where do you go to find morality? There are many people that struggle with this idea. Where do you find morality? Where can we find the meaning of right and wrong? Where can we find the meaning of good and evil? The Quran, of course, it tells us everything. And being such a significant topic of right and wrong, good and evil, you have to be certain that it's in there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ. Surah Al-Balad, you probably memorized this as a young child. Surah Al-Balad, this is chapter number 90, right at the end in Mufassal al-Kitab. These are those short verses that embody the rest of the Quran. He says, and we have shown him the two paths. Meaning we've shown man the path of good and the path of evil. Brothers and sisters, the Quran teaches us about morality. It teaches us about what is right and what is wrong. It gives us clear guidance on what is pure and what is evil. And you might be thinking, you're really stating the obvious. And if that's what you're thinking, then I'd say, it's obvious to you what I'm saying. It may seem obvious to you, but believe it or not, and I'm speaking from personal experience, it's not obvious to many that the Quran deals with this. This is the answer to those questions. It's not obvious to many. There are even some Muslims that don't fully understand this, let alone people of a different faith. Brothers and sisters, there are many people out there that are trying their best to understand what is right and wrong. They struggle. They want to do what is morally sound, but lack guidance to make clear decisions. And that's where we have to step in. I gave you a challenge at the beginning of the month, the Quran challenge. It wasn't to read the Quran. That I'm assuming you're going to do on your own. It was to share the Quran. This is where we come in. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. He said, relay for me even if it's just one verse. This is a very famous hadith. Many of us have committed this to memory. بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Like the previous hadith, خَيْرُكُم مَّن تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Share from me, meaning the Prophet. Share what was given to me and what then I gave to you, even if it's a single verse. Because guess what? A single verse can change everything. It's changed hearts and minds over the history of the Quran. You find stories and stories, books authored just about this topic, how the Quran changes lives. If you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ and the impact that the Quran had on his people alone, let alone how fast and wide it spread across the globe, you can see just how powerful even a single verse can be. There are people who have embraced the faith over one ayah, changed their complete worldview over a single verse. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Convey for me, even if it's just a verse. We cannot hold it as a secret, the Quran. It cannot be held in our homes or our hearts as a secret. It's something that was meant to be spread with the world. Brothers and sisters, this is our collective duty. It's something that we have to take very seriously, especially when we can see the danger of and the damage caused when people stray from divine guidance. When people stray from divine guidance. You know, think about this. We often, as Muslims, we often get wrapped up in Muslim contribution to the world. And we talk about the contributions that were made throughout Muslim history. We talk about like the historic advancements in math or science or medicine. We talk about architecture. We even talk about art. And some even talk about music. It's Muslim contributions. But you know what the greatest contribution is? It has always been and will always be بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. To convey for me, if just a verse. That is the ultimate contribution that this community has made and will continue to make. that will truly impact, I mean a deep impact on people. And that is the Quran. It's Allah's book. Brothers and sisters, the best contribution that we can give the world is to share the word of Allah. It is our Prophet ﷺ said that it is by this book, the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise people, some of them, and will lower and humble others by it. So we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to guide us, to open our hearts to His book, to grant us success in sharing it with the world around us. Allahumma yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammim bil khair wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad